This isn't a self-help show. It's a soul remembering. I'm Cynthia Sharp, educator, trauma-informed practitioner, proud mom to a son with Down syndrome, and vice president of Additional Needs Incorporated. I created Down to Heal because too many of us are told to survive and never taught how to heal. This is where we change that. Every other week, I sit down with parents, practitioners, neurodivergent voices, and body-based wisdom keepers. We talk about what really heals: nervous system regulation, somatic truth, community care, and the stuff you don't hear in the mainstream. Because healing isn't talked down, it's shared, it's messy, it's sacred. If you've lived it, studied it, questioned it, or been broken by it, this is the space for you. Down to Heal is a space I wish I had, honest, whole, and held. We're not here to fix. We're here to feel, reflect, and rise together. Listen on Spotify or YouTube. Let's get down to heal. We first met through Camp Able, and it wasn't until that parent night out that we had one of the most honest conversations I've ever had with other moms about sex, dating, and boundaries for our kids. As I listened, asked questions, and shared my own reflections, I felt compelled to make this a Down to Heal episode. These are the conversations that don't always happen in the open, yet they matter deeply. When I listened back to the recording, it brought tears to my eyes, the raw honesty, the shared fears, and the profound love we all hold for our children. Different diagnoses, different challenges, still the same wish: that our kids experience love, safety, and belonging in relationships that honor who they truly are. This episode is about that: love, dating, boundaries, and intimacy within the neurodivergent community. It's about the real, sometimes uncomfortable, and always meaningful ways we try to prepare our kids for a world that doesn't always understand them. A world where they still deserve to be loved fully and freely. Let's get down to heal. Welcome to Down to Heal. I want to thank you each, Heidi, for joining me in person because, your house is being remodeled, and Brandy and Chris for joining me online. We came together so divinely and unexpectedly, and camp, right? Summer camp. Our kids attended the same summer camp, and we had a parents' night out. And literally, I sit down at this table not knowing anyone. It was like the last table left. And there's Chris. And all of a sudden, Brandy comes along and she's like, hold on. I got to bring my friend Heidi. I got to bring my friend Heidi. What unfolded that night was so cathartic for me that as I listened to each of you, it was like, we've got to do this, and not just at this table. Okay. So, Chris, would you mind introducing yourself, and we'll go from there?
Yeah, so like she said, I'm Chris. I have a daughter, Sophia. She is 26 years old, and she has an autism diagnosis. She's had it since around age 6 or 11. It depends on medical diagnosis versus educational diagnosis. And she also has an intellectual disability, which does not always go with autism, but in her case, it does. So.
Thank you. And Brandy?
Hi, I'm Brandy. My son is Romario. He's 29. He and I met when he was 15 years old, when I married my husband, his father, and he has traumatic brain injury. So it's been quite a journey for me coming in on this from the outside, but my heart is so full being with him.
Thank you. And Heidi?
And I'm Heidi, and I have a 29-year-old son named Taylor, and his diagnosis is autism as well.
So if I may ask, why did you choose to join me in this conversation?
I felt I feel like you don't, once school is over, you're not getting to connect with people who are navigating the same travail that you're going through all of a sudden. In high school, when Sophie was in school, I felt like I saw some other parents. I didn't always get to socialize and sit down and just chat about what's going on. What do you think about this? Maybe about a school setting, but not really about a social setting at all. And now, as a parent of a special needs adult, I often feel like I don't have people that really connect with what Jerry and I's, journey looks like, and the things that you don't know if you should discuss. How much autonomy should you be giving them in this world of scamming? And, it's can be scary. So to talk to other parents and have that week where I'm seeing those other parents all week, and especially parents with adults with disabilities in their life, it just became important. And I was like, I just wish that all four of us could live in a complex together.
That would be lovely.
Amen. And Brandy?
I also love the community of the women that I get to be involved with. I know Heidi and I are involved in Star Ability, and our favorite day of the week is Thursdays because the kids bowl and we get to talk and have these conversations, and it just helps me feel centered and sane, to be honest.
Mm.
It's therapy. It really is, because we all play with each other,
Right.
we really do.
Absolutely. And I try to say that to like the general public. No one knows what your reality is until they actually step into your shoes. And even as an additional needs parent, like parent to parent, our realities are all each different. Yet there's so much that's shared, that's so common, that is beautiful. And what I've loved about being part of the additional needs community is exactly what happened at our table. Like, we were absolutely vulnerable and we just shared from our hearts, and we're like, and this is what I, and what about yours? And it just unfolded from there, which is what I'm excited to go ahead and do here. Because sex, dating, navigating that with the additional needs community is kind of like a sensitive topic. And don't get me wrong, it's a sensitive topic with anyone, but really kind of sensitive of how do you like navigate that? And our kids, man, we're so vulnerable as parents, and then our kids are so vulnerable when they're little growing up. And something happened when Jack was 4. He's 15 now, and I had a parent who had an older child with Down syndrome, and she would not let her son date. She would only allow him to handshake. And for me at that time, it was like, oh, that hurt my heart. Like, I just wanted him to be able to connect. And she was just like, it was just too much for her. So I'm curious, like, there's a part of like our own sexuality or our own expectations of what our children hold. What did you have as an expectation for your child as they developed in their dating? Do you want to start this time?
Sure. Well, this is such a big topic in my life, and I started to see the reality that it was going to be something I was going to have to well, there are no directions, and it's such a complex, complicated topic to even teach my child. Okay, so as he's gotten older, when he was about 17 years old, that's when I knew it was really going to be something that might be a challenge, because he had a physiological desire to be in a relationship and, snuggle with girls and that kind of thing. And when he was in high school, he was fully mainstreamed in education. And so he had a one-on-one aide, and he would be walking through the hallways at his high school, and he would see, the young people, snuggling and kissing and doing the things that he desired to do. And then at the same time, we're teaching him how to be appropriate too and not be creepy. It's a fine line because of the autism. Sometimes they don't necessarily understand personal space and things of that nature. And you also don't want your child to be put in a situation where they're rejected. And so when he started having these physiological desires and they started getting worse, because here I wanted him in education and being around the typical kids so they could model for him. I saw what was happening. It was probably making things worse for him because he had this desire to be like them. And he was more so interested in the typical young ladies, not because he wasn't in special ed. And so, those typical young ladies, like my husband often says, they're looking for that white picket fence, the gentleman that's going to take them to dinners, pay the bill, do those things. The reality, that's reality. Taylor's wasn't really, seeking out the young ladies that might understand him more. And so that was a challenge. And what I'm seeing now as he's gotten older is now his exposure to young people or ladies, it's in the real world. It's all around him. And he's gotten to the point where, he's not shy by any means. He will walk up to a stranger and, try to have a conversation with them. And if they're nice to him, he will sometimes interpret that in, oh, she likes me, or, that's my friend. And he's only had a 3-second conversation exchange with the person, and then it'll transition to going home, and he'll be talking about that person, and he's probably never going to see that person again, but he'll lament on it. And you'll see him like at dinner praying about that person he met and how he, he hopes that he has a girlfriend someday. And that's every meal he prays, and every meal he talks about girlfriends, every meal. So it's fundamentally a huge part of his life. When I'm going to tell you a really personal story. He had some challenges in high school behaviorally because he was recognizing the autism, not understanding it, but recognizing that he was being treated differently by people. And that ended up triggering some anxiety in him that really rippled and got progressively worse. And my child, who was so easygoing and everyone loved, started changing with hormonal changes. And he started getting in places that were darker. And he literally almost couldn't pull himself together to graduate. It was really based on the girlfriend thing, the wanting to fit in, wanting to be normal, wanting to go to the beach with his buddies that would high five him, that were in the gym class, accepted him, the neurotypical people. But he still wasn't part of that clan. And it really, what I've learned through all these years is I really focused on, academics with him, and because I wanted him to grow up and be able to have a little job and be as independent as possible. And what I've learned the hard way is his biggest challenge right now is relationships and wanting love and wanting to have, a girlfriend. And I digressed from what I was going to share. I took him to church because he was really in a dark place, as was I. I went through a really dark night of the soul for several years, and it was all because of this. And he was getting healing prayer from our priest. And the priest God love him. He's such a sweet guy. He also has 2 special needs young girls. And he had asked my son, what can I pray for you about Taylor? What can we pray? And he said, I would like sexual relations. And our jaws just dropped. And I didn't know what to say, but it was a profound moment. And that's exactly what we prayed for.
Yeah, you.
But that's what I mean. Like when you can ask somebody, if you want anything in this world, what is it? And that's what he came up with. So I'm seeing as he gets older, it is a very big topic. It is, it's all around me. We go to the grocery stores. He wants to talk to every pretty girl that, that's out there. And, a lot of them are very gracious, but sometimes they just ignore him. And it kills me. It kills me because it doesn't cost anything to be nice. All he's doing is saying, hello, my name is Taylor. I like to track flights. And he might ask them a question. And it's just so innocent and sweet. But, it makes me think I got to live a long time. I got to live a long time so I can be there for him because I give him that love. I try to compensate. So it's important. This is a huge topic.
I so relate.
Yeah.
Because Jack is 15 and he's going into high school, and he just went into Aubrey, yesterday, and last night he could barely sleep. Now, this is my son who was also diagnosed with insomnia. So it re-triggered the insomnia, seeing all the hot young girls. And, they don't really dress conservatively.
Mm.
And it triggers a lot.
Yeah. It's all over the place. You can't hide from it. It's everywhere. It's on television. It's in the grocery store. It's in a restaurant. When we sit in a restaurant, I literally look and see where's the door, where's the traffic going to be? Where are the people going to be walking back and forth? And I will purposely sit in a spot that I'm facing everybody coming in. So Taylor's back is towards them so he doesn't see. He won't be distracted because I am not exaggerating. Taylor will get up from the table and go start talking to a perfect stranger
Because she's that good looking.
because she's pretty. And the thing that's also a challenge is it has to be understood that our kids don't always understand the age gap. Taylor might see a 13, 14, 15-year-old girl that looks a lot older. He can't differentiate that. He cannot differentiate that. And he will start engaging in a conversation, and she might be standing there with her mom that's looking at my 29-year-old who's essentially like a little boy in a man's body and think it's a little weird. So I'm right there in the background, ready to intervene and say, say a few things to kind of diffuse it and make everybody feel comfortable. But then I think to myself, what's going to happen when that cute little 29-year-old is 39 and 49 and 59, and he still feels the need to go and say hello? Then it's going to be creepy. And how is the world going to accept that? And so that right there is a big fear for me. That's a big fear.
Understandably.
Yeah.
So I've got to ask Brandy, with a TBI, it's a bit different, right?
Yes.
Because there's different processing, different neuronal networking. Have you experienced that with Romeo?
I can relate definitely with Heidi as far as the age, because he cannot differentiate between the age. He will go up to a 15-year-old and tell that beautiful young 15-year-old that he thinks she's pretty. And to me, that's so innocent and sweet. But to that 15-year-old, it made her uncomfortable. And that broke my heart because my son felt shame and embarrassment. And all he was saying was, I think you're really pretty. And he's such a sweet, sweet soul, and he only means the best. And it's heartbreaking to watch your child trying to find love. And that's all we want for all of our kids, is for them to find love. To find love.
You're really right about the age thing, because being on the girl side of it, when my daughter first started her bowling league, which is all 80% boys, and most of them really, well, a lot of them have asked Sophie out. But the funny thing is when this all started, and I would pick up Sophie, or I would be around the softball team or something like that, they would ask me out then because they didn't really even know I was married or anything. So it was like, oh, Sophie doesn't want to go out with me. Well, maybe your mom does. I mean, it didn't matter. It's just, oh, it's a pretty girl. That's a pretty woman. That's a pretty whatever. And I used to dress differently at things like that. And now I'm like way more conservative when I'm around, because I'm not a conservative dresser at all. But I realize that those boys are just wanting a relationship, companionship with a woman, somebody of the opposite sex. And they don't really realize the age thing. It doesn't. And so I definitely, I mean, I feel like just a neurotypical 25-year-old could sometimes think a 15-year-old was 19-year-old or 20-year-old, because everybody just matures so quickly nowadays. And the main thing for you all is just to keep teaching the how to treat a woman and how to talk to them, which with Sophie is, I feel like they do very, very, like, I feel like the boys will talk to her in respectful ways, face to face, perfectly. But there is some texting that I often don't approve of. She doesn't either. But I feel like on TV or in society, they hear about sexting, or they hear about sending pictures. And I'm like walking this line of Sophie may get this inappropriate stuff sent to her, texted to her. And then she thinks that's a horrible person. And I have to tell her, this kid may not be a horrible person. This may just be what he has seen on TV, or thinks this is what people do. While realistically, you guys should have been in a relationship for 6 or 7 months or a year or two before he suggested those things to you on the phone, or asked you for those things, or wanted to send you those things. But it doesn't mean he's not being a bad person. He just hasn't been taught the appropriate things.
It's definitely about education too. I've had to deal with that with my son, with the sexting and the inappropriate pictures. He's done both.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had to sit down with him and have that conversation that this is not how you treat women. The things they see on, the internet, which a lot of boys, I'm sure, have been subject to. And I've had to have those conversations with him, how you treat a woman and how you respect them. It's challenging, but conversations that have to be had.
Yeah, so my daughter's very black and white. So the problem is that once somebody sends her something inappropriate, she wants to put them in this box where I don't want to look at them, I don't want to talk to them. Well, they're in these same leagues, and the person is, then you're in the part, do you go to the parents and say, this was sent? And you never know how the parent's going to take that. Some parents are just right on top of it and like, oh gosh, I am so sorry. We'll talk with him. We'll start thinking about that. I hadn't even thought about that. Or a lot of parents are shocked. They have no idea their kid even think about that. But so my problem is letting Sophie know that's not a bad person because they sent that. It's just they're going through a struggle, which Heidi just talked about, a struggle with wanting to find love and what the appropriate ways of finding love, and then after finding love or finding an extreme like, how that leads to intimacy. And I feel like it's very hard for all of us to get that sequence of events across to the adult boys and girls of how that sequence kind of works in real life, because they're just seeing end results so often.
Mm.
You know, the making out, the sex on TV, the end results. They're not seeing the work up to it, the politeness, the opening the doors, the dates, the maybe at my daughter's pace, it would be a third date before she'd want to hold hands, and she's 26. But on TV, they're saying third date means you sleep together.
Mm.
So it's also talking to the person that you're interested in, finding out what their pace is, that kind of thing.
I was in a situation where my son was dating someone, and they were dating for 6 months, and it was so sweet to watch everything unfold. They went on dates and they did all of that, and then he came to me and he said that he was ready to have sex with this girl. And so I had the conversation with him, and I said, well, you need to speak to her parents about it. I let them do that as adults, and they bravely went to her parents and they said, we're ready. We are ready to be intimate with each other. And the mom said, my daughter's not ready. And that was that. And he accepted that, and it was okay. But they were just so brave and so sweet to be able to take that step.
And it's great they were so open. It's important to be that open.
So what transpired after that? Like, I've gotta know, because that's a pretty big step to
It
ask
really
for
was.
permission.
First of all, I was very proud that he came to me and was open with me and felt comfortable talking to me about it. That's my number one goal, is to always make sure that he feels comfortable coming to me. After that, they just accepted it. Honestly, that's what I love about these kids. They really can just accept things at times. And the relationship lasted maybe a couple more months, and then he moved on to another girl.
The interesting thing about that is that as much as I want Taylor to have a relationship and experience all these things that we all want to experience and have in our life, it's scary. It's scary to think that he would have an interaction with someone and feel that, feel what sex is, right? Experience it, and then it to end, and then it to become something that that you can't easily replicate with another person. It's such a complex topic. Relationships, period, are a complex topic. So if I sat down, being that autism is, such a spectrum, if I sat down with Taylor and I said, Taylor, absolutely, you can have a relationship with this person, right? And let's say he designated some girl to be his girlfriend. Taylor's still going to talk to every girl in the grocery store. He's still going to talk to the girls at the beach, and he tell them he likes their bikinis. He's still, I mean, I talk to him about that, but whether he understands that, when you're in a relationship with someone, you're in a relationship with that person, and that's it. And you have to respect them, because his innate stuff just starts kicking in, and he doesn't stop and process and think, how would this feel if I talked to, he doesn't go there yet. It's not naturally occurring. And when I try to talk to Taylor about stuff like this, he gets really sensitive and he doesn't want to talk about it. So that's my challenge. He'll say, okay, I don't want, let's change the subject. So these important conversations that need to take place, I don't know how to make, even if another person were to try to have that conversation. Taylor's very sensitive, in particular, Taylor is, about anything like this, any topic like this, and he doesn't want to have the conversation. So then that makes it harder and more challenging for me to say, oh, I've done my work. I've done what I need to.
Right. That was going to be my question, whether or not you've thought about getting a therapist, or, even a I know that there are sex therapists who actually do address that, right? But whether or not that, because sometimes therapists can actually help, and sometimes, especially with our neurodivergent children, and how they process.
So one of Taylor's favorite lines is, "I'm tired. I'm tired," right, Brandy? He says, "I'm tired" all the time when he doesn't want to talk about that subject. And he's not really tired. It's like, I need to get out of this. I got to escape from this topic. I don't want to go there. I don't want to go there. It's going to elicit anxiety in me. So I'm tired. So yeah, unfortunately, I think Taylor's teachers are happening on the internet, on the, when he's in his room privately. He when we travel, he wants to make sure he has a place to have private time. He makes it very, when he goes to visit his dad on the other coast, he has his own room. I mean, this kind of stuff is so important in his life, but to actually talk to him about it. So I got to tell you something that was really an interesting phase in Taylor's life. I had been married to his dad and we had gotten divorced. And when I told you he was in high school, he started to see the girls and, the smooching in the hallways and things. And I noticed the private time, the door closed was, a lot accelerating. And so I would talk to his doctor, and his doctor would say, "Heidi, does he know what he's doing?" You know what I mean? Like, I know he's getting aroused, but is he actually making it to the end? And I had no idea because I'm not going in there. So he suggested that I have a conversation with Taylor and I make sure he understands what he's trying to achieve, essentially, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I had this bright idea to go find a video, right? Because I'm not going to do it. I'm a single mom at this point. His dad was living in California still. So what am I supposed to do, right? So I find a video that would be, teaching him. And I just brought it to him in the room. And I said, "Taylor, I think that you would benefit from this," right? I said, "Mom doesn't want anything to do with this, but you might want to watch this." So I give it to him and he closes the door and he watches it. And then he brings me back the iPad and says, "No, thank you." "Thank you, Mom." No idea if he actually even is, getting to the end. I don't know if he's getting it to the end, but I know he is doing something. So, like, even that topic, right?
Right. I mean, I agree. Like, I have tried to show this is what you do, like in a bath, right?
Right.
And we've talked about, like, we use the private time so that he understands bathroom, bedroom only.
Yeah.
And we've had some behavioral issues in that regard, and that's been challenging. Yet trying to teach him to self-pleasure, like the touch, I think that's a challenge. I don't know if the word is a challenge. It's different for us. I don't really know how to describe that. How do you navigate that? Either one of you. Has that been an issue for you, especially as a daughter? Like, how do you?
So Jerry and I are pretty open about our sexual relationship, and with her having two older brothers, and they're quite a bit older, 7 years older, they learned. I told them early on that that they'll have fun no matter what. So just make sure your partner's having fun, because you'll have a guy will have fun no matter what. Just be sure the girl's having fun. And they watched some Dr. Ruth to learn about how a girl should have fun. And they were both in serious relationships and having two boys at like age 17 and 18 in serious relationships. I was buying condoms by the box at Sam's. And just putting them everywhere that I thought they could possibly be alone, sticking them in the middle of the car console, next to their beds, which they weren't supposed to be alone, but I knew if I was gone, they would be there alone. So I just wanted my neurotypical boys to have safe sex. So Sophie's been in a house where sex has been talked a lot about, and there's been times where she's seen inappropriate pictures of her now sister-in-laws because of the cloud. And, when the cloud first started, we all made those mistakes. And, there's been things, so she is not educated about it. She doesn't have a lot of interest. She did at a younger age, and she sees so much of it on TV that when she has questions, I answer them. But I will say that with girls, there's the obsession with self-pleasure is probably at a younger age, like right at puberty. So like around age 13, 14, 12, 13, 14. That is where they're just having feelings down there, not understanding them. But then after those hormones kind of settle in, it's a little bit less important to them. The part of the relationship that's the most important would be the relationship part, not the sexual component, at least for her and some of her friends. But I have made it very clear to her that with boys, the sexual component of a relationship stays very important. And like I said, I think she's kind of witnessed that firsthand as far as being around parents that have an active sexual relationship and then having two brothers that are, newly married now. So it's my thing is that, and a funny story, a friend of mine whose son has autism, he had sex for the very first time. And this was fairly recently. And he didn't tell his mother till after. But he started with, I used protection, don't worry. And she is on birth control also. And the mom's like, oh boy, okay. And he told her that she's like, well, had this worked up to this? What else had you done? They hadn't done anything else sexually except, kissing and things like that. And then they just kissing, kind of probably body smushing. But then they decided to have sex. And for him, he immediately said to her right off the bat, you need to do this to me, and then we'll do this. And that's what he's seen on screens, is that the girl will go down there, and the girl had special needs too, and she followed directions, but the mother did come back to make it clear, let's not put it in an order. Let's not think that you're going to be doing what you see on a screen. Okay. And let's talk to somebody about, what they're comfortable with, and not quite have to replicate what you've seen. And she just thought that he was a little too stern about, well, no, we're supposed to do this first. And I don't think he was stern. It was just, it wouldn't, in a neurotypical relationship, if a guy had said that to me, I would have been like, okay, see you later. For a first sexual encounter for both of them, I thought. And I guess that's what seems the most important to me right now, is to just be sure that everybody between the age of 12 and 40 know that what they're watching. And I have kind of gotten on the bandwagon that I used to think porn was a good thing, even in relationships. And now I'm a little bit just worried about what it's doing to our male population, especially sometimes the female population. But it was a huge problem at Sophie's college program. She did a program for adults with additional needs, special needs, intellectual disabilities, really anything, any kind of disability. And those counselors spent 80% of their time dealing with boys that were getting porn addictions or having problems getting offline, and also scammed by girls online. Scammed to send, if they had any access to money, which is hard to be a college student and not have access to some money, that they would be sending their money off to girls, for for pictures. And
I've had to mention that with my son as well about being scammed. We've had that conversation because you don't know what's out there.
right. And we actually lease a house to a 24-year-old with special needs and his dad. And my son was over there changing the it's a male 24-year-old, and he's a doll. I adore him. He's just great. And my son was over there changing the filters, and he overheard a girl on the video game saying, well, can you send me another $100 Amazon gift card? And to the 24-year-old boy. And my son immediately, like, went after he finished up down there, locked up the basement. He had sprayed off the air conditioner thing. He went upstairs and he knocked on the door and he told his dad, he's like, I don't know who he's playing video games with or what's going on, but I did hear them ask him for a $100 gift card. And it was a girl's voice that asked it, which then is leading into this conversation with you guys today, made me think that there's a vulnerability in boys that I hadn't realized. I had just been thinking that Sophie's vulnerable as a girl, getting suggestive texts and things that she might not be ready for from somebody that just seems like, oh, I see you at bowling on Tuesdays, to that there's a vulnerability because the boys are so sexual and because they crave this kind of sexual identity in life, that they're so vulnerable to being scammed or having somebody take advantage of them.
I had never thought of that.
Oh, yeah. It really is an issue. It really, really is. And, the interesting thing is, even though your son heard a female voice, it might not have been a real female. It might have been.
That I've thought of.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
my son does play video games, but he doesn't play those online where you're playing with multiple people, thankfully. And now hearing this story makes me feel good that he doesn't do that, because he would be vulnerable.
Right. I do want to go back to something that you mentioned, because it is something that I thought about today. ABA, right? It's all, I know our son has gone through applied behavioral analysis. Have your kiddos gone through applied behavioral analysis?
Definitely.
Sophie
I
has
had it
not.
years.
Okay. And the only reason why I asked that is I feel like it's in this arena of sexual conduct and dating, it's kind of like an untraining, because ABA is all about training compliance, right? I tell you to go ahead and do this. I need you to go ahead and follow through. Now it's kind of like, okay, I'm asking you to do something that doesn't hurt you. How do you navigate the untraining and going, okay, when someone asks you to go down, you're not comfortable, or how that
Right.
tone, you are allowed to say, no, that's not something I want to do.
I think Taylor would say no if he was uncomfortable with something. And he did have years and years of ABA. So I understand what you're saying. They get reinforced for following directions,
Mm.
and untraining them. Yeah, that's true. I'm doing that every day of my life. It was such a important methodology that was used for Taylor in his early years. And I actually attribute a lot of his abilities and capacity today to that. But in the real world, if someone gives you a direction and, back in ABA days, you follow that direction and you get that token or whatever, that reinforcement. But today, and while he's an adult, if somebody asks him to do something, he's going to think innately, I have to, comply, follow through, and that will get me what I want. So it makes him vulnerable. I don't know if that's a challenging thing, because people will tell me today that I should start implementing more ABA with Taylor. And I think, well, he's 29. There was a time and a place for that, that was very beneficial, but I don't see that anymore.
I think it's more cognitive behavioral therapy, where you're disseminating and you're applying, like, how how to problem solve,
Right.
right?
Right.
And okay, so this is your reality. And I'm actually thinking of it for Jack for his sleep because I can train sleep, yet he's got to live with himself
Right.
for the rest of his life. And I keep on sharing that with him.
Yeah.
You know, you're going to be your best friend or your worst friend, either way. You know, you've got to train whether or not you're going to choose to sleep or not to sleep.
Right.
Right. I'm not going to be in control of it for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
So
Brand,
I think that
I was going to ask Brandy because it does seem like she's fairly open, and her and Romy have a very, like it feels like she gets a lot of information, which I always think is a good thing from her son. And I was wondering like how those talks go and how you do know so much about, it seems like he's not closed off from you at all, and that's a good thing. And I was just, how
Yeah,
you,
he's just really, I mean, I just let him know that he can tell me anything, as all parents tell their children. So it's more of a choice on his part to share with me. I just let him know that he can tell me anything. He's safe. I will never judge him. I will never, you know, make him feel bad about his emotions or his sexual desires. And I'm the one person that he can trust, no matter what.
yeah,
No matter what the subject, he can tell me anything. I tell him all the time, you can tell me anything.
that's,
And
kids innately know you can say that, but they know whether or not you actually mean it and whether or not your behavior,
I think he feels me. I think he can
right?
feel my energy. I think he knows that he feels safe with me, and he knows that I'm always going to be here for him no matter what.
So yeah, I think that's absolutely impressive. And I know like Jack recently asked me, you know, Mom, can you get me a girlfriend? And I was
I
like,
love
well,
it.
that's not really how it works, though I still set one up, right? And then I asked him, okay, so do you want to do this again? He was like, I he's like, he was telling me about his heart racing, and I don't really know because it was a few weeks ago, and I was like, okay, so you've had open heart. Is your heart like hurting? Is something going on? He's like, no, 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 no. I want my heart to race with the girl. And I was like, oh my gosh, my son knows exactly what he wants to feel in that relationship. And I'm like, what? I didn't even know what to say. I was like, just mind blown. Like, how
They
crazy is that?
educate. My son
Right?
educates me. He puts me in my place all the time because when I when I came into his life, like I said, he was 15 years old, and he just is such a special kid. And they my husband didn't really let him be himself. He didn't give him a lot of leeway and a lot of trust. And I think that's why he trusts me so much, because I allow him to do things that maybe are scary. You know, it's scary to let your kid go to the mall by themselves or, you know, be on a date. But I keep that to myself and I allow him to experience that, because he told me one day, you have to let me learn on my own, Brandy. You have to let me learn on my own. He schools me all
Wow.
the time. They know
Best teacher.
more and they can handle more than I think that we want them to be
yeah.
able to handle, you know.
I have a couple agencies that we're involved with, and they seem to try, like I keep my hands completely off of Sophie's job coach and her job, and I try to make her deal with every aspect of her job herself. And she'll tell me what the job coach was there, what the manager is saying that he wants to train her on next, or what's going on. But I try to stay out of that and make that her thing. But also just that they need an adult life. They need to be treated like adults. They need to have an autonomy that is very scary compared to, like I said, I have boys that right now are 33, 34. The autonomy they had at 26 was pretty much, they were done with college, they were moved out, they had their own household. I had nothing to do with it unless, of course, they needed to, they both live near me. So unless they ran out of something, they'd run by my house to either steal something in my husband's from his garage because they didn't want to buy their own mower or to take a huge thing of toilet paper because they didn't want to go by the store. So, and I look at Sophie, and she does have her account. She does have access to money. She does have a permit. She would like to get a driver's license. She is registered to vote. But those things they're not autonomy per se, in the fact that I feel like if she was living somewhere else, would we have this constant conversation? But I feel like she needs constant conversation because of what's happening in society. And because of smartphones and internet and now having boys that are interested in her, I feel like there's got to be this social coaching going on all the time. But I also feel guilty about, is it too much? Is it not enough? She's 26. Should I leave it alone?
I struggle with that as well because he tells me, stop repeating yourself. Please stop repeating yourself. I heard you.
Mm.
But I can't stop.
No.
Right. And I think like that, what you shared earlier, you don't want to die. You don't want to like not see them to fruition and be able to have that life that even you secretly want for them. Right.
Mm.
So how do you balance that in your own hearts?
I'm working on myself, my emotional state so much. I have evolved so much as a person from when when Taylor was initially diagnosed. I've grown up really quickly. And then I was divorced and was a single mother. I'm remarried, very happily remarried. And as Taylor has evolved as well, if I am off, my son knows it, and then my son's off. It's all energy. He picks up on my energy, and I don't know. I have been self-caring myself so much. I do a lot of meditating. I sit in my closet a lot, and I'm still, and I listen for guidance. I let my thoughts and emotions be heard, and I know that I'm being protected and my son's protected. I know that in a divine way because I see it unfolding all of the time. And that's the best thing I can do for me. If I'm not good, he's not going to be good. But one of my fears is that it can't only be me. I'm one person, and it's so funny how much I'll be like, well, let's see, I'm gonna be 52 this year, and he's 29, and okay, if I stay healthy and I'm cognitively good, I'm gonna be able to see this through all the way to the end, right? I'm constantly thinking like that. And I'm learning that I actually have to relax and be calm and allow, because I need to stay healthy. I need to stay alert. I need to, be there for him. And like I said, he also benefits from that too. He sees what I'm doing. He's listening to the podcast, the teachings I'm learning, and he's adopting a lot of it, So yeah, it's a lot of self-care. I'm going out and I'm getting the facials. I'm taking time for myself. And that's really important. I'm finding my tribe. That is a really big component of my life. The people like you ladies reinforce and help me realize I'm not alone. I had never have been alone. Taylor's not alone. He never has been alone. Neither of any of our kiddos. They're always protected. I really do believe that. And so that's given me a little solace and a little, ability to just relax and, trust.
How
Trust that
How does your son do when you're out of town? That would be my question. Is because I really did not realize how much Sophie needed me to be removed from her until the first winter that I stayed in Marco an additional 3 weeks after my husband brought her home for 1 week. And then we left her here by herself for 3 weeks. She ate a lot of the same foods over and over. But she did her own laundry. I thought she took a lot of pride in those 3 weeks. And she wasn't asking me as a backup on every single thing. And I mean, right now, we've been together for quite a while. We were in Marco together for camp. We're back in Missouri. But she gets an email. Mom, I got an email. Well, what did you get an email about? If I'm in Marco for those 3 weeks, which now I do twice a year away from her, she has to deal. Oh, I got this email. Oh, what should I do next? What is the next thing? I'm going to be out right now. I'm out of work shirts. Okay. So I do feel like those 3 weeks have become such a good thing for her 20s. So I was wondering how he does when you're away.
Well, that's an interesting topic, and I'm sure Brandy is laughing to herself right now because she knows how I am.
I'm laughing
For
because I
instance-
really want to leave Romy alone. I want to leave my son
Yeah,
alone.
I want to. Yeah, I
I
want
really
to too.
do. And I think and I'm so happy that you said that it's such a good thing. It gives them, and they can handle more than we give them credit for.
Right.
I really believe that. I really believe that.
You know, the one thing oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, the one thing I was going to say, Brandy, I leave Taylor alone a lot. He's alone right now. Well, not really. I guess there's workmen at my house, but like Brandy and I are going to be attending a conference in a couple weeks, and we're very excited about that. And my son will not be at my house alone, even though I have a young lady. My husband's niece lives with us, and she's a school teacher, and she's a very attractive young girl. And Taylor and her are very, very close, right? Taylor in particular, I think the most important thing here to remember is everybody's so different.
Mhm.
You meet a child with autism, you've met one person with autism. It's just like meeting an adult. We're all different. You and I, we're all different. And even though Taylor's very high functioning and has a lot of abilities, there are some things that he's not demonstrated that he's comfortable doing, like getting a job. Even though he can do an algebraic expression, he has no desire to go and get a job at Publix or any of those places because of reasons. He's got reasons. He's got sensory reasons. He also doesn't find it to be important. He doesn't find value in his time being there. He finds value in, his tracking of flights and things that he thinks he's doing. That's his job. So when I leave and go out of town, my ex-husband is where Taylor ends up going to instead of staying at my home. He'd probably be better off at my home, right? But then there's the other adult at the home, the 36-year-old. And sometimes if Taylor is alone a lot, he thinks a lot. It gives him some time to lament on his life and think about girls and the things that he desires. And then that sometimes can lead to frustration where he'll start reaching out to me, or you say the wrong thing, you have the wrong vibe going on, and then he's doing the "I'm tired," mantra that he likes to do. So leaving him alone, well, he would need food. He doesn't drive. He really likes to get out into the community. So if I were to leave him alone, I would have to make sure I had all those resources available to him, because he doesn't have a job to go to like Sophie. He likes to go out to eat, things like that. Yeah, Julianne could probably do those things, but the more I leave him alone with her in particular, maybe because she's so attractive, the more I think sometimes those feelings of I want a girlfriend arise, and then some anxiety will arise and things like that. And what do you think he does? He calls mom. I'm getting a text message. I'm getting FaceTimed. So it's something that I would like to build, because I think his independence is really critical. But I think that time alone sometimes creates that time to think.
And it
and judge.
is baby steps. So the first time
Yeah.
I had Sophie's rides all lined up, which was her siblings. I had a sibling taking her to bowling. I had all of her, like I said, all of her work with siblings or a neighbor, and I had everything lined up. Then the next time I did it, I tried to make her a little more uncomfortable. So I told her she could Uber home from work. It's 6 minutes away. But a sibling would take her to work, but she could Uber home. I felt like 3 o'clock is a perfectly safe time to get in an Uber and go 6 miles down the road. Maybe not even that far, probably more like 3.5 miles. It's $6 Uber, right? So it's pretty quick. And then the next time I had one of her teammates who drives, who works at Home Depot, that's on the spectrum and has been her teammate at bowling for like 4 years. I had him give her a ride to bowling every time. So not a sibling taking her, but somebody whose car she wouldn't know. She doesn't know if he's messy and going to have trash, which would drive her crazy. But I'm trying to, so I'm slowly making things a little less comfortable and a little more like real life every time I'm gone. And like I said, my 3 weeks could look like a day and a half to another adult on the spectrum. So it doesn't have to be, obviously where I started, but just to deal with it makes me feel better. My tendency is to make her as comfortable and as happy as she could possibly be. And I have found that she's not a happier person when I'm making her life Disneyland. She's not. She's just as happy, kind of going through all of it on her own. And yeah, the car was messy, she said. And she got home and she's like, the car was messy. And I said, well, you didn't tell him that, did you? Oh, no, I just said it in my head. I said it in my head. That's it. I'm like, okay. And she's been in Ubers that it had a funny smell. And I'm like, you didn't say that out loud. No, I just said it in my head. Okay. But that's what I'm talking about is sometimes making him more uncomfortable will give him more time, will give him less time to think about girls.
Yeah. I actually love hearing that you leave Sophie alone. When you actually shared that at camp, I thought, oh my gosh, I would love that. That would be so amazing to feel so confident and feel like they were safe. And I don't know if I'm there yet. It's definitely a goal. It's definitely a goal. But I don't know if Taylor is there yet. Do you know what I'm saying? I don't know. Maybe I need to cut the cord. I know people think I'm a little bit of a helicopter. And I know Brandy thinks that's funny. Yeah, she reminds me what a helicopter I am. But
there's a snowplow, there's a helicopter.
But it's in a loving way. It's in a loving way.
Right.
It's all for love. It's all in a loving way. But yeah, I admire that. I love that you let her get in Uber. The thing is, I'm wondering, Sophie probably doesn't say anything in the Uber where Taylor would start engaging, especially if it was a young lady. So what would I do if a young lady picked him up in the Uber? He'd be like, okay. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So when I'm talking, that's what I mean. You know what's interesting? I've also noticed. Do you notice how many more boys there are than girls?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So that's why probably that one of the reasons why he's generally looking into the general public, and plus the typical people will engage with him when he asks them a question. They sometimes will, respect that and be gracious. And a lot of the times the young adults with special needs will blow them off. Yeah, I would say more so. I would say Taylor's luck with people that are either on the spectrum or have special needs, they are more reluctant to, have a conversation with him, dance with him at, he goes to Star Ability social events where they'll have the dancing. He's not dancing with special needs girls. He's dancing with,
the people that work for Starbility. He is. And I think if someone with the special need were to show him attention, well, there is one girl that does show him attention. I shouldn't say that. Someone in particular that really wants to marry Taylor and told him that they were getting married on the Disney cruise and and they were going to live here and this is how many kids they were going to have. And I'm watching Taylor at the table and he is really keeping it together, right? So he had a potential, match, but then that was way too overwhelming for him. Like baby steps, you really got to back off. So anyway, I digress. That I would love to be where Sophie is with Taylor, and I hope to be there one day because I think it's really important. But the other thing is not everybody is at the same level as our kids and may never be at the same developmental, level as our kid. I have very good girlfriends that have multiple kids actually on the spectrum, one in particular, and they're at two different developmental levels. And one is definitely never going to have the abilities that our kids do, but yet they have these desires and challenges in their lives. Their kids may be nonverbal, but they still have those physiological desires, to feel what their body is wanting them to feel and what they're seeing. So yeah, I guess it's just a reminder that they're all so different. They're so different,
Well, it's funny because it's a conversation, and I applaud you, Chris, because when I heard, that you left her alone, I was like, yes, that would be like so me. And yet my husband would be like, no, we can't. Right? He would be the one that would be saying no. And it's funny, we moved out of a neighborhood that had a lot of transient. It was a beautiful neighborhood, yet it was very transient and in a flood zone. And I'm grateful to be out of there. And now we're in a very walking, almost elderly type neighborhood. It's safe. It's beautiful. And safe, I mean, we don't worry about like Jack's safety. That's not a concern. And it's safe in that we're not going to get flooded out. Amen. Right?
Yeah.
Talking to my husband and saying, okay, we're going to leave a note and we're going to say, if he wakes up, we're on a walk. That was like a big step.
Mhm.
Right? And it's those little steps that I think on a continuous basis, like really make the world. Like this summer, I was like in my own like head of like, how is this summer going to be? We only have like, I think 3 or 4 summer camps that we had, weeks of summer camps. And I was like, what are we going to do with him to entertain him while we try to work? That's kind of like important because it was like that whole balance. And I could see his anxiety ramping because there was like no schedule. Like at school, there's always a schedule. And finally I looked at my husband, Doug, and I just said, we need to break down a schedule. So I put time for like mindfulness, for breathing, for meditation, and then folding laundry and doing things around the house.
right.
And being able to know, okay, it's time to exercise. It's time to read 2 chapter books. And his anxiety reduced. It was incredible. Now, if I could only do that every single day and have that expanded so that he has his own time. Like last night, he was banging on the drums, literally banging, and his sign of like singing was just more screaming in my ears. So like I was like, okay, this is not like wind down time. This is not for anyone. And I finally looked at him and I went, you're old enough to get onto YouTube and learn how to actually like play, right? So like no more in your room. You're going to be out here going on YouTube and learning how to play that instrument.
Mm-hmm.
How do you integrate that with your kids? What are certain things that have given you like that segue into adulthood that have helped you empower and kind of empower your kids that have helped you empower yourself indirectly?
So my son, I will do things. My mom used to do this when I was young. She would go on strike. And she would say, I'm not doing anything for you for 2 days. And so I learned that from my mom, and I will tell my son, okay, if you, 'cause he was always begging me to treat him like an adult. I'm an adult. I'm an adult. Treat me like an adult. So then I'll do that. I'll do 2 days of not doing anything for him. And you know what? Guess what? He figures it out. He figures it out because I gave him the space to figure it out. If he's hungry, he'll eat, you know? So that's how I do it. Something I learned from my mom.
Now, does he make you meal too, or is he? Are
Oh,
you
no,
just?
no, he just takes care of himself. We're just, I wish he made me a meal. Wouldn't that be great?
Will he clean the dishes up and will he clean up after himself?
He knows to like rinse them off, and yes. Yeah, I mean, we trained him from a young age to like make sure that he cleans everything up, and it's a lot. We have to train our kids. It's a lot of training over and over and over.
And it's a lot of, you never take things for granted. I remember a story where my mom had told, she had raked up some leaves in her yard, and she told Taylor to go out and pick them up and she said, put them in the bag. Here's a plastic bag. So she just took it for granted that he would know how to do that properly. So he went outside and he came back in and said, Nani, I'm done. And so when she went to look and see what he did, he had taken the plastic bag and he had laid it on the ground and he put the leaves on top of it. I mean, this is what I mean. Like, even though he can do very well academically, right? He did very well in school because he could really memorize things, and that was really easy for him. But like these life skills, like he didn't even conceptualize that you open the bag up, you prop it up, that was not there. So every little thing sometimes that you think that they're just going to innately know, you have to think, do they? If I say, go in and get me the Windex, he has no idea what the Windex is unless I have shown him previously that this is what Windex is. This is what you do with it. Just little things like that. It's just crazy what you start learning as they get older, that I never take for granted that he understands what I'm asking him to do. I'm always going to assume he doesn't understand. So then I teach it more thoroughly. I break it down so he understands it and can apply it later on in life. So
I'm going to read to.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. No,
I would
go ahead.
say another thing that people don't realize that you have to teach and you have to keep teaching is empathy. I am just constantly, Sophie will say someone's daughter at work, her husband broke his leg, and so she's not coming to work because she's helping her daughter with their kids. And I'm like, oh, but for Sophie, that's just a fact. Well, I'm running through, oh my gosh, that disrupts the whole family in my head. I'm thinking, all the empathy about how, gosh, now she's not making money because she has to help her daughter with her kids because the husband's laid up in the hospital with 16 pins in his leg. I'm going through the whole thing. And I was just so proud recently when I was out of town, and Sophie and my daughter-in-law was in an accident. She was fine, but she was in a car accident, but it was a major accident. Both cars were totaled. And it wasn't her fault. And my son was supposed to take Sophie to work, and he calls me and he says, Mom, Ray was just rear-ended while she was sitting still at a light, blah, blah, blah. I said, okay, go. I'll figure out Sophie for work. Of course, I'm 1,500 miles away, and I'm the one that gets all the phone calls. So I called a neighbor to take Sophie to work. Then I called Sophie and I said, Sophie, Ray was in a car accident this morning. Cody cannot get you for work. And our neighbor Kim is going to take you to work this morning. And she said, is Ray okay? And oh my God, I'm still like get teary-eyed just thinking she said, is Ray okay? Because I feel like I've been working forever for her to automatically think as an empathetic person. Just while normally I feel like even a year ago, and maybe this maturity, maybe I'm giving myself too much credit because you can't really teach empathy and it's just a maturity thing. But a year ago, I think she would have still been concerned about the last minute change in her ride over, is Ray okay? So I feel like that's something that we don't talk a lot about with autism. And I do feel like with Down syndrome, sometimes the empathy comes a little more naturally. And I don't know for sure anything, but I do know that with autism, empathy does not come automatically for Sophie. And I have to constantly be asking her to put herself in somebody else's shoes. And it's very easy for her to be casual about very significant, important, or devastating things.
I completely agree with that because often said that other deficits don't necessarily, their kiddos don't struggle with certain things like empathy or understanding. Like I remember when 9/11 happened and the airplanes had, Taylor was a little boy and Taylor loves airplanes, loves them. And when he saw that happening, and I can't remember off the top of my head how old he was at that point, he was like, he didn't understand what that meant. That people had perished, that, he did not it's very abstract to him to understand what that meant, cause and effect thing. And that also relates to relationships. So when you have autism and you're kind of in your own world, it's about me, because they don't necessarily understand that, somebody has other interests that, are not the same as mine. That's going to generalize into a relationship as well. So if Taylor were to have a girlfriend and he wants to share with them about all the flights he's tracking and how important that is, and they're like, yeah, well, let me tell you about my doll collection. I'm not even kidding you. He'd be like, okay. I've actually sat at a table with Taylor and this other young lady that, fancies Taylor a lot. And he's showing her his collection of games and video games, pictures that he has. And then she's showing him the doll collection, and he's looking at her like, okay, I don't even care about that. Get my stuff. You know what I mean? So oblivious. There's no, so I have to tell Taylor, that's important to her. This is important to you. And how do you teach someone that needs to be important to you too? You have to respect that they have their likes and dislikes in order to have that cohesive back and forth relationship, that give and take. Do you know what I mean? If it's one-sided the whole time, then that's right there going to be a problem. So if he wants to, have a relationship with a young lady, especially a typical young lady, that's going to pose a big barrier, right?
Right.
So there is a difference between people that are on the autism spectrum. I will definitely validate that for sure, versus other disabilities.
So just know that children with Down syndrome can be autistic as well. So,
Oh, really?
oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah, I guess that's true. I think I've heard that.
And at one point, you kind of questioned that within Jack because of certain behaviors that he had, right? And I definitely taught boundaries immediately because I was a teacher. And I taught him, especially regarding sex, like no one touches you there before he even entered preschool. Like by age 3, he understood, like, okay, if they're changing your diapers, like no one touches you there, right? He had pull-ups at the time and he was still like learning in transition, almost there. And it was funny. I was so grateful because he actually fought the teachers when they went to change him. And I was like, yes, he gets it. Like what other mom would be like cheering that her child is like going, no, right?
Yeah.
And I was so upset with school because they started teaching hugging everyone. And I was like, I don't want my child to be affectionate with everyone. Why are you teaching that to a neurologically divergent child who needs to understand boundaries? That kind of like upset me. He has grown into definitely being much more empathetic, yet like when we're doing a podcast, like the family podcast, if my husband and I are talking, he makes it known that I am so not interested in what you're saying. So we have to shorten it, right?
Mhm.
It's so, yeah. So I Yeah.
And often people, when our kiddos are young, they're so darn cute. And I remember when Taylor was in elementary school that everybody loved Taylor. All the teachers loved Taylor. I was the PTA president, and I would come onto campus and I would find Taylor sitting on the lap of the school nurse while they had some downtime while he needed some sensory break. She adored him. She would want to, everybody else had to follow that rule that there's no hugging. Actually, in our school, they didn't really encourage that. But it was different when it was Taylor. Everybody was hugging Taylor, loving on Taylor. No wonder Taylor wants hugging and squeezing and snuggling.
Right?
It feels good. It
It
feels
feels
good
great.
for all of us, everyone.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Brandy, how is the empathy affected with Romy, and how old was Romy when he had a traumatic brain injury?
From what I've been told, he was in a walker, the one with the wheels. So he was unable to, he couldn't walk. So under 2 years old.
Okay.
And his biological mother left the door open and he went down the stairs. So that was
Okay.
the cause of the traumatic brain injury. And then, his dad and his mom got divorced. And so he's had it since he was very young. Um, my husband was very empathetic and he instilled that in him at a very young age.
Mm-hmm.
He's very, very, he always wants to make sure, are you okay? How was work? Was it hard? He just is innately like that, I think.
Mm-hmm. I like that.
So
Some
we're going
things
to
are
close.
just innate.
No, please.
Mhm. I was just saying some things are innate and some things are learned. I mean, I think that goes for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if you were to talk to a new parent of a child much younger than ours, what advice would you give in talking about sex? And when should they start talking about sex?
I would say as early as possible, but I have such a unique situation because I have not had my own children. So it's hard for me to speak on a lot of things knowing that I didn't meet my son until he was 15. But just being open and honest, I think, is the best policy always.
Chris?
Definitely starting early and trying to it's such a mixed bag because you really, really, really want them to know that sex can be a positive thing, but then you're also teaching them stranger danger. So I kind of did the whole stranger danger, not a lot of sex talk until closer to puberty, as far as, and then started as, around 9 or 10, 11 with all three children discussing sex in a relationship. You may start feeling urges type of way. And of course, having my two oldest being boys talking about consent a lot from a very early age. Because I think that as women of a certain age, I'm 60, I think that out of me and my girlfriends, probably 4 out of 5 of us were date raped at some point during high school or college, meaning that we had drank too much to really give consent. So consent was a big thing. And I do think in any kind, and of course, with boys, so consent's been huge for me. And I usually went in with the consent first, then talking about the feelings that you're having and how normal they are and trying to, it's complicated and it's ongoing. And I say starting around 9 or 10, it was just kind of a constant that would maybe be a subject in our house for a couple of months where you feel like you're talking about it daily, then maybe it go away for a few months. Nobody's really talking about it too much. And then, being open about having, that parents that are married may or may not be having sex. Dating, you may or may not be having sex. Dating for several years and not having sex is fine, just as dating for a month and having sex may be fine. So also just letting them know that there's no true definition of a sexual relationship, that they can all be very, very different. And
Wow.
like my daughter right now, I feel like the kind of sexual relationship she would be ready for with somebody that she dated would be, you know, some kissing and some hand holding. And a boy would have to be very, very patient with her to kind of get past that. I mean, that's one of the reasons I changed her doctor's appointment it was OBGYN today. And I knew I just couldn't whisk her out of here to the OBGYN without doing a little more talking about it from the time she gets up. Well, don't forget, you know, that today you will be getting undressed from the waist down, and that, you know, you'll be asked some questions, and that they'll do a pap smear. Do you remember what a pap smear is? You know, because it's only something she does once a year. It makes her extremely nervous. She does have a female doctor, but it is, there's a prep that if she was a 26-year-old, you know, neurotypical, she'd be living on her own and making her own OBGYN appointment, going to it herself. And I probably would never have met her OBGYN.
So thank you for being so vulnerable, Chris. And I, like you, that was one of those things for me, having Jack, who was nonverbal and nonverbal for quite some time. I know that our children are quite susceptible to having transgressions, to say the least, or having people unfortunately take advantage of them. And I wanted to make sure that that wouldn't happen to him, right? That cycle. So thank you for being vulnerable, because this is exactly what I wanted for Down to Heal, right? Because it is through our journeys that we do heal in that next generation and beyond. I would say start literally even before they're talking, like just start and going, oh, mommy, daddy only wipes. And if you're noticing, especially if they're nonverbal, any different behaviors, that is your telltale, because it wasn't a sexual transgression, it was a physical transgression where literally a professional was working with Jack and I could tell that she had something against me. And one day when I went to drop him off, he was like, I don't want to go ahead and go in there. And I thought, that's never happened before. So the following time I came home, told my husband, I think she's doing something, but I can't put my finger on it. And the next time I walked in, I was like, nope, I'm going in with him. He was fine. And I was like, okay, so that confirms it for me. That just let me know. So thank you all.
I think your gut instinct is the best guidance. I can look back in my life and go, I knew it. I knew it. Why didn't I listen to you always, as a parent, that innate gut instinct, that's from divine. It's divine guidance. And always stick that's going to be your compass right there in life. When you have a special needs child, you will know. You just will know. So that's my best advice.
I just learned recently that women innately have it far stronger than men. Like, I just thought it was me.
No, I always say I'm always right. I tell my husband and I tell my son, I'm like, you know, mommy's always right, right? And they laugh, but I am always right. And you know why I'm always right? Because I listen to my gut instinct, and that is my guidance. And I always tell my son and my husband, well, that's coming straight from above. I'm getting that from divine wisdom. That's God. So
We've had some instances where I've said to Doug, like, this is going to happen. And he's like, okay. And it happens. And he's like, how do you know? Right. So, ladies, I want to say thank you each of you, sharing your perspectives, sharing your light, and allowing me community, because this was beautiful. I needed you too.
I miss you guys so much.
Oh, this was amazing. Thank you so much for setting this up. It was really wonderful.
For each other. Thank you for joining us on Down to Heal, a space where we don't escape the mess. We lead it with heart, with courage, with curiosity. This podcast is part of a bigger movement, of remembering that healing is relational, that community is sacred medicine, and that we rise by tending to the roots, and that real change begins by tending to what's been ignored for too long. Through Synchronicity and Additional Needs Incorporated, I walk alongside parents, practitioners, and families navigating the spaces where the system falls short and where the soul steps in. If something in this episode spoke to you, let it ripple, share it, sit with it, or simply take a breath. And remember, you're not alone. Because this is not just personal. It's collective. It's cultural. It's generational. It's how we build a world that holds all of us. Until next time, stay rooted in truth, stay soft in your heart, and stay down to heal.